Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Diptii Shah, and welcome to my show, Artistry. Today I have with me the wonderful Jessica Dante of the YouTube channel Love and London. Hello, Jessica, and welcome to my show.
Hello. Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
It is such a pleasure to have you. Jessica, tell us about your YouTube journey. When did you begin and why did you begin?
So I started YouTube back it was about 7 years ago now. And I started because I had always wanted to, first of all, build my own business. And I had been doing like content creation for a little bit. I had kind of dabbled in some travel blogging, and I kind of wanted to grow that, but then I realized that I wasn't actually reading blogs anymore personally, but I was watching a ton of YouTube. And this was kind of like the earlier generation of YouTube where it wasn't quite as big as it is now, but there were some people that had like millions of subscribers and were doing like daily vlogs and showing, their travels around the world. And I was so invested in watching these videos. So I kind of figured, okay, so I think there's something here. I wonder if this is like something that I should be digging into. So I started to learn how to make my own YouTube videos, and it was a big learning curve because I had never done anything with video before. My first videos are terrible. But I kind of dabbled in all different types of content, and I did a couple of videos about London specifically because I was living in London at the time. I think it was about 3 years in at that point. And I saw that the London specific content was performing much better than like my general travel tips. And this was considering I had like not even 1,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel. So I was like, okay, this is a good niche. There's no one else really doing this on YouTube at the moment. So why don't I dig into this? And also, if I'm going to be doing travel content, to be able to create content in the city that I live in is going to be a much better business model than if I have to go travel the world to continue to make videos.
So you selected travel as your niche. Why did you select travel and tourism? Did you have some kind of experience, some kind of background in travel?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've always loved travel. Before I moved to London, I lived in Italy for a year. I did a couple of backpacking trips when I was younger, studied abroad in Antwerp. And I've always loved, even if it's like cities around the US, I always love giving recommendations to friends of like cool things that I found. And then before I started YouTube, my first job ever in the UK was working in social media for one of the big travel companies here. So I was really always in the travel space. It was just kind of the industry I always liked being in. And in that job, I also learned a lot about social media. Not really about video because we weren't doing video, but yeah, about like how Instagram works and things like that. So I've kind of just always loved it, passionate for fun, but also been involved for work.
Jess, you call your channel Love and London. Did you actually fall in love with London when you started making these videos?
I did. Yeah. Full disclosure, that name actually came about. I haven't even talked about this that much, but the name comes from because when I first moved to London, to the UK, I moved here because I fell in love with an English man and we got married. So basically I started a blog where I was documenting my process of moving over to London and, like being in love and beginning my time as a married woman and things like that. And then it transitioned to something way beyond that, which is, I think, way more interesting than just listening to my stuff about being married. And we're also not together anymore, my my ex and I. So but when I moved here, I had only been to London once for 4 days. And thankfully I did love it. And this was back when I was a broke college student and the exchange rate at that point was like, it was like $2 to £1. And I still really loved London. So even though I hadn't been here for very long, I knew I would like it, but I didn't realize I would love it as much as I do. And I think part of it is that is quite similar to New York. And I'm from the suburbs of New York originally, and I love New York City. So I actually think it's kind of like a nice in between of the rest of Europe and like the craziness of New York.
Right. So there is actually a romantic angle to it, and you actually were in love when you named the channel. Yeah. Now or not, but love was there, right? So of
Yeah, it
course it
was.
matters. And yes, I am a New York lover as well. I have lived for some time in New York, and I cannot forget New York for, I mean, I don't know what to say.
That's cool. I didn't know that you lived there. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, London cannot compare to New York. I'm sorry.
No, I agree.
Just your top tips to anyone who is struggling to select a niche for YouTube channel.
That's okay. I think that's quite normal. A lot of times niches, you kind of just stumble into them. So I would say that's kind of what happened to me, because when I first started doing just general travel tips, I thought that was going to be a better option. So I didn't, close myself in too much. But actually, that's the beauty of a niche, is that there's always so much to talk about. So I would say the number one thing is just to start creating content and just see what people are responding to best. It might be that you talk more passionately about a certain topic, or that there's just more of an audience and less competition in a certain niche. But just creating and like practicing doing that in itself, and then also putting a lot of stuff out there and seeing what works and what people respond to, is a really good way to finally niche down and find what you want to focus on.
So when you actually decided, okay, that this is my channel, I want to talk about London, how did you actually create your content? How did you plan it?
So I basically, in the beginning, just thought about what are some of like the main questions that people, when they travel somewhere, have. So lots of stuff about how do you use the public transportation. That's like a lot of my beginning videos were about, to be fair, a lot of them now still are about public transportation, because that's just always a hot topic. I thought about like what people want to do while they're here, what kind of like money saving questions do they have, what kind of practical stuff are they always asking about and Googling. And a lot of also the beginning content, the ideas came from what people were asking me in the comments. So there was a lot of things like, how do I get cash once I arrive there? And how do I get from Heathrow to the center of London and stuff like that? So yeah, it was a combination of those two things. And then I would just kind of sit down and write a whole list of like the next 10 videos I want to make. And then I would put them in my task management system, and then script, record, edit, and as I found the time when I could.
Were you doing any parallel job at that time when you started your channel?
Yeah. So when I started, I was still in full-time work. And then a few months after I started, I went freelance. And it was really good, actually, because once my freelance work, kind of like once I built up a bit of a reputation in the freelance world, I would be able to do like a month-long contract at an agency and then get a bunch of money in. And then I would maybe have like 2 or 3 weeks where I didn't have any work. So then I would go really hard on Love in London and anticipate that I would be taking on another contract soon. So I'd kind of bounce back and forth. And it was a really good way to build it up without as much pressure. And I think I did that for about 2 years, until finally I was making enough money from Love in London that I didn't have to actually take any more freelance work on. So I just stopped freelancing.
That's a very practical way to go ahead with your YouTube work, right?
Mm.
In the first 2 years, if you don't mind, how many subscribers and how many views did you receive?
So the first 2 years, I want to say that I'm trying to think how long it took me to get to 1,000 subscribers. Probably at least a year. Usually like the first 1,000 is the hardest, and then the next 1,000 gets easier. The next 10,000 gets easier. But it's definitely a slow burn. I mean, I was doing it basically, for fun, but with an idea of where I wanted things to go, for probably at least the first year. And then 18 months in was when I like started to get some revenue streams in, stuff started trickling in. It was forming more of a business. And then within the 2 year mark is, I think, is when I like was able to basically go full time with it. And I'm trying to think views wise. I can't remember, to be honest, but I think there's one video that specifically did really well, and it's still one of our most viewed videos. It's got, I think, maybe 1.5 million views, but It's just 10 important things to know before you come to London. Half the information isn't even relevant anymore or it's incorrect, but it still gets watched all the time. And I think in the first year, that video had somewhere like 50,000 views, which obviously like is a lot for a brand new channel. And again, that was where it was like, okay, this is a good way to go. So it does take time, but you get there.
In the initial days, when you just started, did you invest in any kind of equipment? How did you start?
Yeah, so I started first with whatever I had. So I did have a camera because since I had been blogging, I was trying to get better with photography. But this camera, I remember it was terrible for doing video. I like couldn't see myself. I couldn't see if I was in the frame. I also like didn't have any lighting, and I was living in a flat at the time where there was only one place that it made sense that I could sit to film, like talking to the camera. But because it was the ground floor, there was basically like an hour of time, especially in the winter, where it was like light enough for me to film. So I had to like make sure that I was there on a Saturday at like it was like 3 to 4 o'clock or something, and just use that. And that was basically it. And then slowly, as like I started to learn more about how equipment works, how to like do better recording, I got a little microphone that I attached to my could attach to my shirt, and that made the audio much better. And then, I found another camera. This was a couple years down the line, but another camera that was much easier and better for recording video that I could attach the microphone into as well. And I kind of like slowly invested, but I never really went too crazy with it, because I wanted to make sure that the information, that is the most important thing. And I'm also just not really that clued up on, I'm not like I know how to set up a decent video, but I don't know how to do like the major things that now the people that I hire, they know how to do. It was just like, it's just not really my strength.
Right. So you're not too stuck up on technology or equipment. You're more concerned about the quality of your content.
Yep, exactly. Because you can, especially in the beginning when I was starting, it was a lot of educational content, because it was all the practical stuff. So it doesn't really matter how like nice of a camera that I have, as long as they can hear me clearly and I'm speaking clearly and I'm delivering good information. That was the most important thing. So yeah, and now I'm to a point where I can hire people who have better equipment, and there is such a difference because we're running around London filming some beautiful places, and we do want it to look really nice, but they take care of that because I don't know
Right.
how to do it.
Of course. Leave it to the professionals.
Yeah.
What about the team? When you started, did you take help from anybody? And what about now?
Yeah. So when I started, I think I worked for about a year and a half, maybe up to the 2-year point before I hired anyone. And then my first hire was probably about a year and a half in, actually. My first hire was I hired my friend Christiane to edit my videos for me. So it would just free up a little bit of time for me, like, because usually at that point, I think videos would take me 2 to 3 hours to film. But by having her do it, and also she was better at editing, so she made the videos better than I would. It freed up a little bit of time for me. It made the videos a little better. So I was working with her a few hours a month. And then I hired a virtual assistant because I got to a point where I was selling some digital travel guides, and I was having people contacting with customer service questions. We also had launched at that point a photography service where people could have a professional photographer with them to take pictures of them in front of like London landmarks. And that was quite a manual thing to set up. So I needed somebody to help with that, and to also manage like my email inbox and help with some other smaller admin things and free up about like an hour of a day of my time. So that's where Danny came in. And so that was almost 5 years ago now. And she's been with me. She's still with me. And she's moved up. She's doing bigger and better things. And then, yeah, so I've just kind of continued hiring. Video is so important for us. So I have 2 people who are someone who's a shooter, someone who's an editor. They also can reverse if I need coverage. And then I'm currently about to hire a producer for YouTube as well. And then this last year, I also hired a copywriter who does all of our blog content. I also hired someone to do our Instagram and TikTok stuff, which has been amazing. She's like really smashed it out of the park. And I feel like am I missing a freelancer? I'm trying to think, who do I send in money to every month? I think that covers everything. We're also then hiring a new assistant who will take over some of the lower level stuff that Danny's doing so that I can free up her time to do the bigger things that she's working on for us now. So we're about to hire that person hopefully tomorrow. So in 2 months, we should have we'll have 7 freelancers doing stuff for us. But yeah, everyone's all freelance still.
All right. That's going great, I would say. Have you registered a company for Love in London?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you do this in the 7 years journey? When did you feel that, okay, it's time?
Yeah. So I actually only did it a few months ago. So I was about to switch from self-employed to the limited company just before COVID hit. And thankfully I hadn't, because obviously COVID, when we're a travel company and nobody's coming to London, was not a great couple of years. So because I hadn't switched over, I was able to get the government payments, which was like super helpful. So I did like prolong doing that for as long as possible because I wanted to get like back to the certain revenue levels that we were pre-COVID and then go into it. So then in August we set that up. So yeah. Yeah.
Jess, you have a fabulous team. You make quality content, right? I'm talking about the earlier days. You've got everything that, would be required in a video. You've checked all the things. How do you react, or how do you feel if you still don't get views? Have you faced that?
I think sometimes that happens now, even with Instagram and TikTok, what we're doing. For example, there's one TikTok that we put out a couple of days ago, and I was like so proud of that. It was about the Saatchi gallery, and the footage looked amazing, and Sam put it together like beautifully and had really good voiceover to it. And it's done pretty well on Instagram Reels, but for TikTok video, and I was like, why? We have 21,000 followers on TikTok, and this has had like 400 views. I don't understand. This is really like, this is a very TikTokable piece of content. So we do still deal with that. And also we have dealt with that with YouTube coming out of COVID, because we kind of like knew what we were doing before COVID, but then obviously like tastes change. So it took us a while to get back into the swing of things of like, what are people watching on YouTube related to what we do? So what we do when stuff like that happens is we keep a really close eye on like what is working and what is not, and try to like pick apart why things are working better and why people are not responding to them. Sometimes it's just like a guessing game, and you just have to look at what's different between these videos. And then sometimes you have data to back it up. So for example, in YouTube analytics, you can go in and see like, where did people drop off of the video, or what's the click-through rate of the thumbnail and title? If that's lower, then we have to figure out, why is that lower than usual? What's missing from this one that we can't find that we have in our other ones? Or is it just the topic? So it's basically just constantly looking at what's doing well and like picking that apart, what's not doing well and picking that apart. And then also being not afraid to try to different types of things, because these platforms also change all the time. So looking at what other people are doing, especially in other industries that's working for them, is really interesting, because you might be able to translate to your own industry and have like do something really cool with that. So it's basically, can be frustrating, but it's just ongoing trial and error and keeping an eye on everything.
Let's talk about thumbnails and titles, how important they are, and how super cool and super good have you become at them?
Oh yeah, they're so important. I think like we're pretty good. So I've had my shooter John was helping me with thumbnails last year, and then we're gonna have somebody new who's gonna help this year. They're tricky. They're really important, really, really important. Basically, they are the window into your video, and that's what is going to get someone to either watch or to not watch. And I'm, as you know, if your video has a low click-through rate, YouTube is not going to serve it to anyone outside of your own community. Sometimes they don't even serve it to your own community. So it's really important to nail that. What we've done is we always look at the thumbnails of similar videos to ones that we're producing, and we look at what looks like is working. Obviously, we don't have all the data, but we look at what looks like it's good and it's working and will work for us. And we also keep an eye on what's working with our past thumbnails and what's like standing out. So for example, if you look at our top 10 videos in the last 6 months, all of the thumbnails are really colorful. And a lot of them have some kind of like London landmark in the background, whether it's a red telephone box or the Elizabeth Tower or the London Eye or something like that. So we keep an eye on stuff like that and have to implement it basically.